Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special GRID Live wrap-up and encore combo show alongside Brandon Crossland. I'm Ben Schneider. We're here to discuss the weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway on dirt, plus give a week 2 update on the grid ranking. But first, we have some sad news to report regarding Justin Owen. All of us in the motorsport community are shocked and saddened by his tragic passing. The 26-year-old from Harrison, Ohio, passed away after a serious accident during a qualifying race at Indiana's Lawrenceburg Speedway, which was hosting the USAC Sprint Car National Championship. We send our condolences to the family, friends, and everyone grieving the loss of Justin during this difficult time. It's a horrible reminder of the dangers in motorsport, a sport we all love, and a community of people that care about each other and come together in such difficult times. Now, in other news, Cody Ware, who sat out yesterday's race and was replaced by Matt Crafton, has been indefinitely suspended by NASCAR. Ware was taken into custody today on charges of assault on a female and assault by strangulation, inflict serious injury. You see the tweet there from Fox Sports' Bob Pockras. Rick Ware Racing put out a statement a couple of hours ago that reads as follows: "We are aware of the incident regarding Cody Ware and his indefinite suspension from NASCAR competition. We understand NASCAR's position on this matter and accept their decision. The matter is still under investigation, and Cody is fully cooperating with the authorities as due process takes its course. RWR is committed to continuing our multi-car efforts in the NASCAR Cup Series and is in the process of finalizing our plans for the number 51 entry at Martinsville Speedway and beyond. These plans will be announced in the coming days." Now, let's get into the one race for the grid ranking we had this weekend. Talk about the Food City Dirt Race at Bristol Motor Speedway. Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick won Stage 1 and 2, respectively. Stage 3 saw great racing from the lead and closing stages. Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe, and Reddick were all inches apart with less than 30 laps to go, but Briscoe fell back after contact with the wall, which left it to Reddick to chase Bell. But a crash from the last lap saw the race end under caution. Bell ended up taking the win. Bell was a favorite to win this weekend with his dirt background and experience. He's tied for the highest top 10 finish rate in the Cup Series this season so far at a 75% top 10 rate. He leads all Joe Gibbs Racing drivers in wins since 2021, and he also moved up from 17th to 11th in our grid ranking this weekend. Brandon Crossland joins us once again. Good to see you, Brandon. A rare opportunity for the two of us to talk about the Cup Series. How about that?
Yeah, it seems like it does slip into our conversations here or there anyway, so we might as well make it on the wrap-up show at some point, right?
Yeah. I like that's a Nashville SC shirt, isn't it?
Actually, it's Nashville, South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. It is Nashville. I get that joke from my own parents. They're like, "What is this? Is this Nashville, South Carolina?" Like,
no, I had a feeling. I got my Philadelphia Union shirt I brought with me. I'm in Florida. You guys can probably tell it's a different location for me, but I don't know. I saw that, thought about going to run to put my shirt on here, but I'll just I'll leave it at that. But appreciate you joining us on Monday night as always. A good opportunity for us to talk some Cup racing on this Easter Monday here, and catch up on a couple of comments from the chat room. First, Kobe Lambeth says the motorsports community is one big family, regardless of discipline. When one hurts, we all hurt together. Rest in peace, Justin Owen. And Adam Lemery's agreeing 110% there with Kobe. But getting back to the Cup race, Brandon, let's talk about Christopher Bell a little bit here. Great start to the year for him. Is he now a weekly threat for the win that everybody must contend with?
It's surprising to me when I saw this question, because I really didn't realize how much Christopher Bell really has become the face of Joe Gibbs Racing just over a short period of time. With Kyle Busch leaving, that was the biggest bombshell move of last year's silly season, going to Richard Childress Racing. And now in the Joe Gibbs camp, you've got the new up-and-comer Ty Gibbs, who just won the Xfinity Series championship with a rebranded 54 car. You got Martin Truex Jr., who's been around since 2006 in the Cup Series, but not exactly in his championship form like he was in 2017. Although he has shown some sparks here from time to time at different places. And then you look at the rest of the team, it kind of eludes me. I'm kind of having a brain fart here. There's somebody else I'm missing, I know.
Hamlin, Truex.
Hamlin. Yes, yeah. Denny Hamlin. Yeah. That might be his biggest competition there. Denny Hamlin might, in my opinion, is still the face of Joe Gibbs Racing right now. Christopher Bell, really good with the dirt, obviously, as we saw last night. And finally, someone who is competent at dirt racing per se, took the checker flag first at Bristol, like they've been hoping for since 2021. But I think when it comes to the face of Joe Gibbs Racing, I think Denny Hamlin kind of still holds that cake. Was easily one of the greatest drivers in the field that's yet to win a championship. You think about Mark Martin every time you think of Denny, and now an owner driver, but still driving for a different owner. I think he still has a lot to prove, and he's still really the leader at Joe Gibbs.
Yeah, I don't know if Christopher Bell really could have done anything to surpass Denny Hamlin in terms of being the face of Joe Gibbs Racing at this point. Obviously, Denny's been there for almost 2 decades now in one form or another. So I think certainly in terms of seniority is still the leader regardless of how they're performing on track. He certainly is the most experienced within the team, and I think certainly will be the leader of that team until he either retires or leaves in free agency. I don't know. I thought Kyle Busch was a lock to retire at Joe Gibbs, and we all know, he had other plans apparently to go to Richard Childress there in one of the biggest free agent signings in recent memory last year. So we'll see what Hamlin's future holds. But as for who might be next in line, Martin Truex Jr., there always seems to be that question: will he come back? Will he not come back? How much longer does he have? I think Christopher Bell, is certainly in line to be, along with Ty Gibbs, one of at least the co-leaders of that team for years to come.
Yeah, if he doesn't move anywhere, he will be one day for sure. Christopher Bell, his Xfinity Series career just has been the magnum opus so far of him in the top national series. We've yet to see him in championship form, in my opinion, although he has made the playoffs. I think this could truly be one of his years where he is a serious championship contender and makes it out of the round of 16. But he's had little flashes in the pan here or there so far. You're kind of grinning. Did I say something wrong?
No, you're good.
Okay. He's had some flashes in the pan. I remember winning the Daytona Road Course event back in the COVID fiasco. That was kind of one of his first flashes of greatness, and it was kind of quiet in between victories. But maybe he can start picking up some steam here in 2023.
Yeah, and I believe he was in the championship 4 last year as well, right? So, I mean, this has been
that's right.
a long time. Yeah.
The amount of things I forget is astounding, Ben.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like the championship, is kind of a blur with how crazy the format is these days. But, Bell really has, I think, turned himself very quietly, but he's done so nonetheless. He's turned himself into a solid weekly contender here over these last couple of years. And I'm with you. I think it's going to be interesting to see the steps that he can take forward throughout the rest of this year and beyond. I think he's going to be a championship contender for years to come if he stays at Joe Gibbs and continues to build on what they've built upon so far.
I will say one thing against Christopher Bell. His paint scheme this past weekend was not symmetrical, and it left a lot of people very disturbed in the OCD community. You look at one side or the other. I really thought it was symmetrical, but no, they've got this thing with DeWalt where it's a little different on both sides. So, I mean, you got the requirements in there. I'll give you that, but it kind of hurts the eyes when you see both sides.
Just hire left paint. That'll fix all your problems right there.
Yeah, it was a pretty paint scheme, though, to get a victory.
All right. Well, Bell is in the 20 car, which Tony Stewart made famous and won 2 championships with. You want to talk about faces of Joe Gibbs Racing in the past? Stewart was just named recently to NASCAR 75 greatest drivers. The list will continue to unveil in the coming weeks. His driver, Chase Briscoe, as we mentioned, still came home with a top 5 and 5th place ahead of the team leader, you can say, at SHR, Kevin Harvick, coming home in 9th. Now, we saw some drama between another racer with a big dirt background in Kyle Larson and another Stewart-Haas racer in Ryan Preece. Early in the race, Preece and Larson got together. Preece went spinning. He lost several positions in the deal and showed his frustration towards Kyle Larson. Later in stage 3, Preece put Larson into the wall and eventually out of the race. After the race, Preece told Noah Lewis he, quote, just got loose. Brandon, did you see the second incident as just hard racing, or do you think there was some retaliation there?
That really looked like retaliation, Ben. Can't really cut that any other way. That was one too many taps there on the back straight, I think it was. Just got loose. I don't think it's going to cut it. And through this week, it'll be interesting to see if there's anything that comes after that for Ryan Preece and Stuart Haas. And the Fox booth, Tony Stewart, Clint Boyer said something like that. That might be retaliation. Tony's like, oh, I hope it's not, because he can probably feel his billfold collapsing with every hit that Ryan Preece gave to him. But Kyle Larson, not really one to make a lot of friends last year and this year. I guess this year now too. But it is nice to see another little rivalry like this form up, Kyle Larson and Ryan Preece, and it'll be interesting to see if this continues, possibly even into the month of May.
Another driver that had a strong run up in the top 10 was Todd Gilliland. Another strong race for him in the Front Row Motorsports number 38 Ford. It's his second top 10 finish in 3 races and his 4th top 15 finish in a row. Gilliland is ahead of drivers such as Eric Almirola, Ryan Preece, a couple of SHR names, and Harrison Burton, his fellow sophomore in the Cup Series in the point standings, despite missing 1 race with Front Row and driving Rick Ware's number 15 at Phoenix. He'll be in that car a few more times this year as well. Of course, Zane Smith will be in his 38 for a few more races this year. Gilliland's going to split those remaining races in Front Row's 3rd car of 36 and with the Rick Ware number 15 as well. But Brandon, you look at Todd Gilliland and the results he's put up in recent weeks. Do you think he's undervalued here in his 2nd Cup Series season, and should a Ford team consider him as a full-time driver in 2024?
Yeah, I think he really is undervalued. I just don't know where that open spot would be for Todd. That's really impressive to see there. He's above in the points to Eric Preece and Harrison Burton. That's so a lot of those are, you got Wood Brothers and 2 Stuart Haas machines there that are that you're ahead of, and Rick Ware equipment. With Front Row equipment. Sorry.
Well, 1 race was a Rick Ware equipment.
That's right. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. Todd Gilliland, he's had such a interesting past there in the Truck Series with the whole controversy with Kyle Busch Motorsports, and I kind of forgot how all that went down, but there was a lot of a drama involved there, and he finally got a win. I think
Martinsville.
Once he got that win outside of Kyle Busch Motorsports, it was a big victory for him. And
well, the Martinsville win was with Kyle Busch.
It was with Kyle Busch. I messed up the story.
That's all right. He got a couple with Front Row, I think, when he did that Truck Series deal with them. But yeah, I mean, when you talk about he and Harrison, it's kind of been a similar career trajectory, because I think they were teammates at Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Truck Series, and Kyle was, I think, just very blunt. He was asked how his truck program was doing, and neither of them had won a race yet, and he was off. He might have won all 5 of his starts that year or something. I mean, you and I certainly know how well Kyle does every time he gets into a truck, but at the same time, Todd and Harrison were struggling to get up to speed a little bit, weren't going out and winning races, and there was that radio message that our friend Luis Torres was able to capture and kind of went viral on Twitter that day. I think Todd had already announced that he was moving on at that point. But certainly on shaky terms there with Kyle Busch and that whole deal. Now back in the Cup Series with Front Row, and it's an opportunity. Not necessarily with what we would consider a top team and top equipment, but at the same time, that team has taken steps forward over the last couple of years. Michael McDowell's had the best few seasons of his career since he won the Daytona 500, and just pull the standings up here. Michael was 17th in points, it looks like, and Todd is 23rd. And, you look at some of these names he's ahead of with a Rick Ware start, in and amongst what he's been driving this year. Bubba Wallace down in 24th, AJ Allmendinger 25th, Eric Jones. We'll talk a little bit more about legacy here in a second, but he's ahead of both full-time legacy cars. And, of course, Preece, Burton, and Almirola we all mentioned as well. Justin Haley, of course, has that deal with the question regarding the penalty and that whole appeal process. It's bumped him down quite a bit, but it's interesting to see how well Todd has performed, relatively speaking, this year. 4 top 15 finishes in a row for a team like that, I think, is pretty good. So looking ahead at what he might be able to offer a team in the future, we know SHR is going to have an open seat next year, maybe 2, because Eric Almirola was supposed to retire. He ended up pushing back his retirement. We'll see what his future plans are, but I think there's going to be some seats open at Ford in the not too distant future. And I think Ty Gilliland is certainly a driver that those teams are going to have to at least consider if he can keep this up, especially with Front Row Motorsports.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm still trying to kind of figure out what is Todd Gilliland's driving expertise. Like what kind of tracks is he best at? But so far, really, with this year, it's kind of like he's so well-rounded, kind of good at everywhere, because we've kind of been to everywhere so far in the season already. And here he is doing so well ahead of these other Ford drivers that have more money and better equipment than him. But yeah, that's also interesting. Thank you for reminding me of that. Kevin Harvick being out, my goodness, next year. The Ford car is going to be open. That's going to be one of the hottest tickets for this year's silly season. And then you've got the other spot there at Stewart Haas. That's going to be a possible place for him to go. But really, Ford doesn't have too much on the open for place for people like Todd to go to. So
yeah.
We'll see where he goes.
Yeah. Well, and again, he's with the Ford family right now, obviously, just not with one of their flagship championship winning organizations, at least not in Cup. Obviously, of course, Front Row just won the truck championship with Zane Smith. And he's got to be on Ford's radar as well. But yeah, I mean, it's good for Todd, to get an opportunity like this. Obviously a K&N legend, almost won both the East and the West championships when he was driving for Bill McAnally. And then, got the deal with Kyle Busch Motorsports, which probably could have gone a little bit better than he did, but then was brought into the Front Row family in trucks and now trying to make a name for himself in the Cup Series. So we'll see what he can do. Still a very young driver with a lot of time to continue to develop. So we'll see what happens there. Now, speaking of young drivers, let's talk about our couple of rookies here in the Rookie of the Year battle, which we highly anticipated would be a good one here. Ty Gibbs just earned his fourth top 10 finish in a row. 3 9ths and now a 10th this weekend at Bristol Dirt. Noah Gragson, on the other hand, still looking for his first top 10. In fact, he only has 2 finishes inside the top 20, and his Legacy Motor Club teammate Eric Jones is also off to a slightly worse start in terms of average finish compared to 2022. So, Brandon, with all the hype surrounding Legacy Motor Club, the investment from Jimmy Johnson, of course, running part-time in that third car as well, are you surprised by Gregson's lack of performance in particular, and would you call the start of the season disappointing for Legacy Motor Club?
By Gregson's lack of performance, I'm definitely surprised that he's not performing as well as he is right now, even in Legacy Motor Club equipment. Noah Gragson, he's about with Ty Gibbs. He was about all we could talk about in the Xfinity Series last year, and in every other thing he's hopped into, he's always shown that he's a top competitor. So it did surprise me. I had really high hopes. I mean, the season's not over, but I had really high hopes for Gragson coming to Legacy Motor Club. And let's be honest, I had high hopes for Legacy as a whole with Jimmy Johnson coming aboard and the rebrand and all of that. But so far, it just looks like petty GMS with a different name attached to it. It's still these subpar performances and finishes. I guess the real litmus test will be when we get Eric Jones to Darlington, see where he can finish there, because I know he loves that track and a recent Southern 500 winner. That's one place where he can shine. But I wouldn't call the Legacy Motor Club hype off yet. And it's the first year has got to always be the roughest year. And I know Jimmy Johnson hasn't done nothing. He's probably doing a ton of different things we'll never see behind the scenes with this team and trying new things and getting better pieces to the puzzle that is a Cup Series program. I think it's one of those things that takes 5 years, and we probably won't see the fruit of the labor until as we approach 2030 maybe, or something like that. I don't know. But it's too early to overall, it's too early to say Legacy is a failure. But Noah Gragson, I did expect him to start. He is outperforming Eric Jones, at least at the beginning of this season, with the same equipment. But maybe we'll see some success here later on to the season. I am surprised by the lack of performance. All right, I lost sound on you, Ben.
Sorry about that.
Okay, you're good. Okay, we'll start
No,
over.
I muted myself while you were talking, and I always forget to unmute myself. So my apologies there. But I was just saying, it always takes some time to build a Cup Series program up, and of course, like I was saying, Legacy have that background with Petty GMS, and the Petty legacy goes even further back than that. Although I guess the team's recent history can be more accurately traced back to the Evernham days, but anytime you're starting a new program or bringing new people on board, it always takes time to build your chemistry up. And, I think that's part of what's made Trackhouse so remarkable is that, and again, they bought the assets from Ganassi. So,
Yes.
They had some assistance there, I'm sure. But, you think of Trackhouse 2311, it takes time to build a Cup Series program into an elite championship contender. So I don't think anybody expected Eric Jones to necessarily go out and make the championship four necessarily in their first year. But, I wouldn't put winning a race past them just yet. I think there's plenty of time. Like you said, the season's still relatively young. But it has been a little bit disappointing. And, I think we were looking at this Rookie of the Year battle, obviously things back to Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson and how incredible their Xfinity battles were, hoping for some more of that in the Cup Series. And it looks like Ty Gibbs is starting to come into his own a little bit and, put that, hit the consistency aspect of it out, put the string of top 10s together. It's been a good start to the year for him. Can't really say the same for Noah Gragson. So for the sake of that Rookie of the Year battle, hopefully they can turn the ship around here before it comes time for the playoffs.
Yeah, Ty Gibbs, unfortunately, for our enjoyment, he's acclimating a lot faster, and he's got that Joe Gibbs equipment that helps him do that. So maybe towards the end of the year we'll get some sort of battle again, but it's really just Ty Gibbs taking it so far.
Well, the bar is low because last year the Rookie of the Year battle was decided essentially of a checkered flag at Daytona, right?
Yeah.
The only way it was not going to be decided was if Todd Gilliland or Harrison Burton could steal a win somewhere before the playoffs began. So maybe that's another flaw in the playoff system, but that's beating a dead horse at this point. Let's move on to another hot topic and hot discussion we can have here, kind of our open segment of the week. This was the third race at the Bristol Dirt Track. We saw plenty of great racing all around. A bunch of caution flags, like typical Bristol, you could say, but only the fourth race this year not to enter overtime, although it did still end under caution there with the accident at the end. Brandon, when we look at this Bristol Dirt experiment here, do you think NASCAR and SMI should continue with this dirt track in the spring every year, or revert back to concrete, or even reduce Bristol to just one night races in the fall with that philosophy that we should only go to every track one time? What do you think we should do with this spring Bristol date moving forward?
I shouldn't be given this power because I have no idea. There's pitfalls to all options here. I think if we continue with this dirt track, SMI seems to be okay with it, but I don't. I'm with you, Ben. We talked about this before the show. I don't understand the satisfaction and the logistics that they have to face here every year. Just building this dirt track, ripping it apart for the night race in September or October or August, and then prepare for it again, then tear it down. That's a lot of moving dirt back and forth for a place that's not a purpose-built permanent dirt facility. They're capable of doing it. They have done it for the past 3 years, and it's been, in my opinion, the last 2 years have been a really enjoyable product. And we'll get to that later. I mean, it's not, is it pure dirt racing? Is it what we see at Knoxville Nationals or Eldora with late models and sprints? No, it's not. It's stock cars, which aren't meant to be on dirt, going on dirt, which is entertaining to me because they're not supposed to be there, and that's what makes it fun. And I think they know that. SMI knows that too, and that's why it's been so fun. But to get back on the subject here, do you continue with the dirt track? It's the one dirt track on the calendar, and people are arguing whether they think it's a crown jewel race already or not. And I don't know about that yet. And then the other thing I'm seeing here is, well, if you're going to justify this, you need to add more dirt tracks to the calendar because it's silly just to have one all year long. Or you need to do none at all and take it off, revert it to concrete, make the spring race. But you look at the spring race attendance numbers, and they show that that's not a really smart option either for SMI. Reverting to that, people are going to go back to what, or like they know what to expect now. It's going to be the you can't make it another night race because that's the crown jewel. So it's going to be a day concrete race at Bristol, and I don't think people are going to show up to that because they showed that the past several years, and reduce Bristol to one night race in the fall. That might be the best option for me, really. As much as I like the dirt racing at Bristol, either bring it somewhere where it's a permanent dirt facility that can handle a cup event or a whole truck cup weekend on Easter weekend, or take the dirt out. But I know in this industry, they're not one to have an idea and then revert from the idea that they had, because I don't say this to be harsh, but I think they think all their ideas are fantastic, and if they revert on their ideas, that's to show the public that they think their idea was bad, or that they made a mistake, in a creative idea. But enough of me blabbering on. Ben, what's your idea on this?
Well, before we get to my thoughts, I'll read the comment from Humperdinck here. I love racing on dirt. It seems to be a love or hated thing with fans here. I am all for diversifying the schedule as much as possible. I think it's a friend of mine in a group chat was just saying this last night. The fact that we had Kimi Räikkönen and Jenson Button in the Cup race at Coda, and then 2 weeks later we have Jonathan Davenport in the Cup race. I mean, yeah. What other series on this earth are you going to get that much star power and variety in terms of ringers coming into your sport? And we got the street race coming up in Chicago this year, and of course there was that. I think there was a tweet from Adam Stern. I forget if it was yesterday or today, where they're talking about they're already concerned about traffic. So who knows how that's going to go?
Month-long traffic problems in Chicago in July.
On steroids. But I think you have your super speedways, your road courses. You're going to have a street course now. You're racing on dirt, which you hadn't done in 50 years before we brought it back. So I think in a perfect world, if we can make it work, I'd love to see a dirt race on the schedule. I think it silences any. There's no debate in terms of what racing series has the most diverse schedule in terms of track types anymore. Now, I mean, the street race was the last thing that NASCAR needed before. I mean, we got
it's complete
every kind of track you could. I mean, I guess maybe we got to find a way to do an ice race, right? And they're working on that too with the Euro Series, right? So I mean, there's no doubt that we have the most diverse schedule in racing now. But to your point, I can't imagine the resources that are being used. I mean, how much money does it cost to bring that much dirt? I know it's only a half-mile track, but you pour all that dirt onto the concrete, and then you undo it for the fall race, the night race, and then you come back and you do it again, and then you undo it, and now you've done it again. Now you're going to have to undo it for fall of 23.
And you can't tell me that it doesn't have some sort of wear on the facility itself.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, there's that to consider too. My fear is that, of course, the spring race was dying, for lack of better terms. When you look at how many people can be seated at that speedway, 160,000 or whatever, and the amount of people that were showing up for spring race, it wasn't 2007 anymore, right? So you brought a lot of interest and curiosity to the spring race because you're doing something different. I wonder if at some point does the dirt race become the same old thing that we do every year, and the novelty wears off and attendance starts to dip, and then you're pouring all that money and resources in to convert the track again, and what are you getting out of it? I don't know. I just think we'd be better. The show might even be better if we go to a purpose-built dirt track like Eldora. But then again, Eldora could host a truck series. Do they have the facilities to be able to host the NASCAR Cup Series and all the interest and star power that's going to draw in? That's another thing to consider as well.
They would need improvements there, and they would also need some reconciliation with Tony Stewart and NASCAR, because we had that whole debacle where we couldn't even take the trucks there, so we had to go to Knoxville.
Well, here's another thing to consider, Brandon. I know you and I both share the Christian faith as well. This was a topic that's come up, the last few years. Adam Lummery's asked your take on racing on Easter. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I really don't like it, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. And I've seen a lot of people try to justify. I've seen a lot of I'll even say I've seen a lot of quote unquote Christians try to justify it, but I really don't think I mean, as a sport, they can do whatever they want, of course, but I don't think there's any reason for it to be on Easter weekend. I think there was a reason for several years why we took that weekend off, and I'll leave that there. Thank you for the question, Adam.
I think it's important to remember not everybody in the sport is a Christian, but right. I think there are a lot of people in the sport that do share that faith.
That's why I say they can do what they want.
Yeah, of course. So, I don't. Maybe some Christians might disagree. I don't think it's a sin against God to host a race on Easter Sunday, but at the same time, I think it would be nice for to consider everybody involved in the sport taking the time out of their weekend, just from the family aspect. Because I remember growing up, sometimes I think there were some nationwide races at Nashville, on Holy Saturday, I guess. So it was on Easter weekend, but the Cup Series was off. They didn't race on Easter Sunday. I think it would be nice if we could find a way to give these teams. I mean, especially because we have one off weekend in 37, 38 weeks now. I mean, it's the most grueling schedule in all of sports, you can argue. So I think that, they could use another off weekend regardless. But in particular, if we're going to find room for another off weekend, I think Easter is probably the best option there. And I think that, there's certainly, let me put it this way, there certainly wouldn't be a lot of broken hearts if we took the dirt race and put it somewhere else on the schedule and said, we're not going to race on Easter. I don't think too many people would be complaining about that.
And now, by the way, that's one of the reasons people were saying that the attendance was still kind of low. It's because it's on Easter Sunday.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
I mean, families are out doing other things. If you can get a good packed house there on Sunday night, then hats off to you. But we haven't really seen that yet.
Yeah, I will say this: racing at 7 p.m. on Easter, I think is preferable to racing at say noon on Easter.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
I will give them that.
Yeah,
this is the one time where I'm going to hop off the noon train and say, if we're going to do it on this day, let's do it at night so that families can, you can go to church in the morning, have your lunch or maybe even your dinner with your family. And then, if you're a race fan, you want to sit down and watch the race, they're holding the race, that's fine. But, racing, I would not be a fan, especially of racing on Easter if we did it at noon or even 1 p.m. because that's 10 a.m. over on the West Coast. I think if we're going to race on Easter, it's got to be a night race. But again, I think I would be with you. I would prefer if this remained an off weekend so that everybody who does celebrate can enjoy that time with their families.
Yeah, personally, it's just it's a subject. It's just about reverence and
sure.
And that's just
yeah. Well, let's move on here to the GRID Live Encore portion of the show, I guess you could say. I honestly don't have too much to say about the truck race this weekend. It was pretty straightforward, Brandon. Joey Logano, I think he's got a bright future someday. I see one, maybe even two Cup championships in his future.
He got a young kid from Middletown, Connecticut. Opportunity knocks.
Second career Truck Series win for a youngster. Well done. But anyway, of course, Logano won the inaugural Cup Series race on Bristol Dirt. He dominated this truck race this past weekend with Thorsport Racing to take, as I mentioned, his second career win. Of course, he did get that one win, I believe, at Martinsville with Brad Keselowski Racing several years ago. For the first time in stage racing history, the same three drivers finished 1, 2, 3 in all three stages. Logano's Thorsport teammate Ty Majeski took second, with fellow Cup Series regular William Byron finishing in third. It's a good thing Josh Birch isn't on the show tonight. Brandon, did the Truck Series race fail to live up to the hype or the standard that the Cup Series race set? And, this kind of falls back into the conversation we were just having. Are you okay with this being the dirt race, the only dirt race on the Truck Series schedule?
No, I kind of like this being at Eldora in the Truck Series, and it kind of broke my heart when we had to go to Knoxville, and I didn't really pay attention too much to the Knoxville races. So, knowing that this is the only one we're going to have this year, I enjoyed it. If it weren't for, of course, the Joey Logano and William Byron being at the top, and Joey Logano not forfeiting the lead, except for Ty Majeski for one lap and Matt DiBenedetto for 11. And that was about it. It was the Joey Logano show for Thor Sport. And that is the downfall of the race. But I did tell you before the show, I do really like how the Craftsman trucks handle and operate on the dirt. I think they are a great vehicle for this type of racing. And yeah, this is still not true dirt racing. I get that. It's like a hybrid. It's heavy cars that aren't supposed to be on this kind of surface doing this kind of thing. And I think that's what makes it so much fun. And so I had fun with it. It's a shame we've got Logano and Byron in there as great drivers as they are. It's the long-winded debate we have on here almost every weekend. It takes the spunk away from the regulars there that could have got a win.
And it is. I always say it feels like it's better than it was, right? It is. You don't have 20 drivers racing every weekend anymore. But I do feel like almost every week at the beginning of the year, we're talking about a Cup regular at least being in the mix, if not winning the race outright. So, something to consider there. And it's not just there you go. We're talking about it. It's not Kyle Busch. It's not just a Kyle Busch issue. But we let it go with the other Cup drivers because they don't do this all the time. They don't win all the time. It's a consistent issue here. So,
you know what, Ben? I'm starting to go crazy. I'm about to even say you should let these guys run for the championship at least if they're going to show up all the time.
Well, I'll say this much: let them score points.
Yeah.
Why are we holding the whole reason that they were forced to choose points was because it was supposed to be like you're not racing for a championship. Like Kyle Busch is not going to win the nationwide title. Brad Keselowski, Carl Edwards, Clint Boyer, and I guess Kevin Harvick, that stretch from 06 to 10, right? Not in that order, but those 5 drivers winning it as Cup regulars, that clearly didn't work because in 2013, 28 of the 33 races were still won by Cup guys. So now you've put limitations on them. Nobody's going to win a championship if they're just running 5 races anyway. Like, what the heck? Just let them – they're in the race. Let's give them the points. Why not just –
What's it going to hurt?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt anybody. And I'll tell you what, it actually will help. Because we had this whole thing with Ross Chastain a few years ago. Ross Chastain was forced to choose Xfinity. Then he goes on a tear with Nice Motorsports in the Truck Series. And after 8 races, he realizes, I've got a better shot at a truck title with Nice than I do in Xfinity, splitting time with colleague and
That's right.
JD Motorsports. So if you didn't have to, I feel like it's kind of an outdated issue now where you have to choose your points. Because the Cup drivers are limited, just let them score the points. I don't see any harm in that. Nobody's winning a title. Only winning 5 races anyway, and it throws the, it'll be interesting to look at. Like, how many points can you score in 5 races, right? If you're Kyle Busch and you sweep the schedule, I don't know. I don't see how it harms anybody if we do that.
Give them a Cup drivers trophy, a separate point standings just for the leechers that come in throughout the year.
Yeah, well, there's that idea too. There's the whole idea of
someone should set that up too. We should put that on. Somebody needs to make a Twitter account just for. Yeah. I'm sure it's out there. We just don't know about it yet. If you do that, let us know.
Yeah, or like a class win, right? Like Cup drivers are in their own class. I don't know. Casey Campbell, a Cup driver, won, and some bad news, I guess. Kyle Busch is in the truck race next week, but some good news on that front. I believe it's a Dash for Cash race for Xfinity, so no Cup drivers in the Xfinity race there. And of course, Casey, happy Easter.
You too, sir.
Easter Monday, Easter weekend to you as well.
Thank you for adding to our struggle, though, of Kyle Busch being in yet another Truck Series event at the Paperclip, which is going to be a hard place to pass him, I'm sure, if he gets to the front.
No doubt. Well, let's move on now. Cover the grid ranking here. Of course, not too many changes in the grid ranking with the Cup Series being the only race this weekend. We'll pull up the top 10 for you right now. Next week, we do have IndyCar, MotoGP, and NASCAR, so the top 10 could really change depending on how those races play out. Pato O'Ward could also overtake Max Verstappen with a win or a second place, depending on where he qualifies. And now we'll pull up the full grid ranking for you here. Kyle Larson, we look at the NASCAR drivers here, lost some ground since he fell out of the race after the contact with Ryan Preece. Christopher Bell, as I mentioned, jumped up to 11th. That's the highest he has ever been in the grid ranking. Tyler Reddick has also gotten around Byron. He is now 18th. Byron missed out on his 4th top 10 finish of the year. He falls down to 25th, but still in the grid ranking as we move forward here. Brandon, are William Byron and his team losing ground and losing momentum, especially in light of the recent penalty struggles that Hendrick's gone through? Or do you see Bell and Reddick also starting to show their potential? Is it a combination of both? How do you read this here as we move into week 2 of the grid ranking?
Yeah, it's. I really think it's a combo of both there. William Byron had those 2 string of wins. I can't remember if it was Auto Club in Vegas or Vegas in Phoenix, but it was one of those very early stretches back to back that kind of elevated him there on the ranking. But Bell and Reddick are really starting to take form here in the spring. That really was Reddick's race to win there, actually, this past Sunday, if he could just had a few more laps there with Christopher Bell. It's interesting to see Newgarden at 13th there, just after his Texas win. Fernando Alonso right there on the top 20. And Ben, you and I, well, I guess you do, but I don't really get to see the whole grid ranking system too often. So I do like analyzing it when I see it. I think it's a really cool thing we get to do here at Grid.
Well,
it's kind of like the formation of everything we do is kind of based upon the grid index.
Yeah, and a shameless plug, I just had our own Joe Samaniego on my podcast, and we talked a little bit about how the grid ranking got started. So if you're curious, you want to learn a little bit more about the metric and how it all is put together, you can go check that out once we're done with the show tonight. Now, Alex Bowman is tied with Christopher Bell for the most top 10 finishes, but Bell now has a win and more finishes in the top 5 over Bowman. 300 motorsports drivers are in the grid ranking. Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, and Ross Chastain are all within striking distance of getting into the grid ranking. So Brandon Bowman's won at Martinsville before. Is he on the short list of favorites to win the race next weekend?
Can you remind me, was that last spring when Bowman won?
I think that was Byron. I believe Bowman won the fall of 21. That was the whole deal 21. With Denny Hamlin in the post-race exchange there.
Okay, man, that feels like forever ago.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, Bowman won at Martinsville. He's got to be on a short list for sure to win it. But it's Martinsville, and it'll come down to an overtime finish, and so we'll see who knocks out who and who gets ruffled feathers, and that probably will decide it. I think Christopher Bell might go back to back with this momentum he's got behind him with the dirt. And of course the wall riding is banned, so Chastain's not going to get away with that. He gets to take the wall home with him, which I thought was a good gesture there from Martinsville Speedway. But I think Ross could be a contender too. With wall or no wall, he'll find some pace there to be up front too. And I'm pretty excited for Martinsville, to be honest with you. And hopefully it'll be a better, with the short track package changes we've got. Maybe it's going to produce some better racing there throughout the run, and we'll see some more gentleman passes, preferably, would be preferred.
Yeah, I don't think Ross would have done it anyway. I think he said, one time was enough for me. It was something that he doesn't really have any interest in doing again,
right?
Regardless of whether it's banned or not. But maybe another driver would have. So, now we know that they tried that. It's not going to go over too well with NASCAR. So
yeah, and like we said last year, we're really glad they nipped that in the bud.
Yes.
Just go ahead and handle it now, because they're race car drivers. It will happen.
Yes, I completely agree. And I called that. I told y'all it was going to happen to people on my YouTube channel that told me I was an idiot and dislike bombed that clip. It turns out I do kind of know what I'm talking about. I'd like to think that I've been following this sport for a long time. I had a feeling they were probably going to say, yeah, that was, it was like the T-Rex car, right? That was awesome. That was fantastic. Good on you guys. Don't ever do that again. All right. Well, Brandon, not as much to choose from this weekend, of course. Of course, most series were off for the Easter weekend, but we did have the truck race and the Cup race, which we just recapped. What was your one shining moment throughout this weekend in motorsports?
In totality, one shining moment would have to be all these cars at Bristol Dirt that were able to 360 turn with no caution and to keep going and keeping it green. There was so many spins like that. You could shout out a bunch of different people, Michael McDowell in particular. A lot of guys that had these just 360 spins and they were able to keep going. I think those were worthy to be noted. And I guess I'll give the other one to the entire grounds crew at Bristol Motor Speedway that puts this thing together. My hat is off to you quite literally this week. You were my one shining moment. Great job with this tremendous task of moving all this East Tennessee dirt in and out of Bristol Motor Speedway.
Well, you took mine actually right there. That was
Really?
going to be my one shining moment. Hats
Sorry.
off here. That's all right. That's all right. It's a great problem to have when it's a moment so great that we are both going to share it here. Hats off to everybody at Bristol Motor Speedway. Regardless of what you think about the dirt race, it is a massive, massive project every year that we've done this now 3 years running, and now they got to undo it all and get ready to run the race back on the concrete later this fall here as we move on into season. So, it's a massive project. I'm sure it takes a team of more people than we can count, more resources than we can count. So thank you to everybody for allowing NASCAR to try something a little bit different. You got to give them credit, regardless of what you think. They're listening to the fans' feedback, and they are trying to diversify the schedule, give us something a little bit different and mix things up a bit. So we've seen some mixed results with everything, but all credit where it's due for at least making that effort and continuing to come back and try to make the show better each and every year. Adam Lemery says, one shining moment, Christopher Bell doing a Polish victory lap in honor of Alan Kulwicki, still missed to this day. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it tonight for this Grid Live wrap-up and encore combo show here. Be sure to follow us on all our social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, most importantly, right here on YouTube. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers before the Indianapolis 500 later this May. It's going to be here before you know it. If you really like what you saw tonight, you can take 5 minutes after the show to invest in the Grid Network Patreon. Help keep us on the air throughout 2023. Thank you, as always, to Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, and David for your support. It means the world to us. It allows us to continue to grow this outlet here. And our long-term goal of $500 per month will allow us to begin attending races on site on a more regular basis, expanding our coverage for you, the viewers. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can follow the link below in the description box to buy me a coffee. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Now, taking a look at our upcoming schedule here on Wednesday, Kobe Lambert and Josh Birch will bring you Grid Tonight with Matt White, and he will bring his update on the Grid Endurance Performance Index as well. So stay tuned for that. Joe Samdiego is back with the Women in Motorsports program on Friday, so stick around for that for some NHRA news. Daniel Zeri will be there as well. And, of course, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this weekend, as always, with pre-race wrap-up and encore to follow as we get back to our regularly scheduled programming. More series to cover next weekend. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for this evening?
Yeah, it had to do with the end there, the Polish victory lap that Christopher was able to do in honor of Alan Kulwicki. Mike Joy, one of the greatest broadcasters of our time. We're privileged to still be seeing him do his fantastic work that he's going to be hopefully in the Hall of Fame for one day. But there was a slip up there about owner drivers. One of the last, he called Alan Kulwicki one of the last great owner drivers to win a championship. And I didn't notice until today, seeing it on Twitter, that he said that, and then Tony Stewart's standing right there next to him, another owner driver to win a championship. So, I mean, I understand. I don't fault Mike Joy at all. I thought that gave me a little chuckle.
Well, and I think we can't really compare what Alan did to what Tony did, coming in and purchasing part of the established Haas racing team. And, Alan, I'm sure, was much more hands-on in terms of the day-to-day operation. Not to say that Tony had no involvement, because he certainly did and continues to with Stewart Haas Racing. But Alan was a true...
He really was, though, yeah.
As close to a one-man show as you can get, with his Underbird and everything. Certainly, as Adam said, still missed to this day. Well, Brandon, thank you again. For Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next weekend. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.